G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here from blenderguru.com, coming at you with a brand new tutorial, this time covering the difficult topic of materials and texturing using the Cycles rendering engine. So Cycles has been around now for about 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know, depends on when you say it started, but I think it's time now that we can start getting into some more advanced, different materials and things, because I've done a tutorial on the, interior rendering and then the introduction to Cycles, with a donut scene and stuff like that, but they're all very clean looking materials. They're really relatively easy to create. So in this tutorial, I thought we'd get into some more of the meaty stuff for some more of the advanced expert users out there that want to start creating some more interesting things other than clean looking fresh scenes. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to create this rusted material that you can see on this lantern here, as well as this light bulb getting like a sort of a grungy, worn out looking glass kind of look, as well as that creating this wooden texture material thing on the ground there, as well as putting some footprints on it using GIMP, as well as that adding some an alpha masked tree background, adding this texture on these posts here, and yeah, basically having a bit of fun with the scene. We'll also do a tiny bit of compositing at the end just to create that little light glow there, so I'll show you how we did that. But yeah, before I start, I thought I would just tell you sort of where the inspiration came from. It started way back when I originally saw the movie Signs, which if you haven't seen it, there's like a family that are like farmers living out in this crop field, and it's just a really nice sort of isolated looking scene, and the cinematography was incredible, and it's just like a really, at nighttime there's just the insects, chirping and stuff like that, and so I really sort of fell in love with that type of scene, and ever since I saw the movie, I wanted to create sort of something similar to it using Blender or 3D, whatever, and yeah, and I actually experienced it myself when I went camping with my dad. I'll just show you just a few of these photos, just so you can have a look. I say camping, but technically we were there to hunt. Okay, now I'm reluctant to say that because I know some people don't like the idea of hunting, but it's a sad fact of life that in Australia, not all the animals are good for farmers. So some of them cause lots of damage and they destroy crops and things like that. So the most humane and proper way to put them down is to hunt them and shoot them, basically. So just want to get that out there. But yeah, so we stayed in this little, really like a classic tin hut looking shack thing, and we camped there, and that's really sort of, if you have a look, I'm not sure if you can see in that photo, that's what it looks like at nighttime. Some of the images there. I'll show you this one. I really don't like this image. My dad took this image of us because he wanted to create like an old-timey kind of classic photo. I don't really know the concept behind it, but anyway, I'm not really just having a look at the shed. If we could just focus on the shed, you can see that you've got these like old wooden floorboards here and these little posts that are holding the roof up. That was really sort of the inspiration for this environment right here. So you can see you've got some posts there which have very similar textures to what you can see here as well. So yeah, so that's really sort of the story behind this image anyway. Not that you really need to know that, just thought I'd fill you in anyway. So without further ado, go ahead now and open up the starter file. So that's available on Blender Guru if you're having a look at it, and this is what you see. So getting right into it, the first thing we're going to be doing is the rust material on this lantern right here. So you'll notice that it is in separate objects. So I'm just going to focus on the biggest one, which is this piece at the bottom right there. So first thing I'm going to do is just isolate this layer, so on layer 1 now, and I'm just going to create a plane and position it directly above the lantern, just like this. I'll scale it up slightly, and this is just to light it because currently, as we're adding the materials and things like that, you actually want to be able to see what you're doing, of course. So I'm just going to give that an emitter material, and I'm going to set that strength to 10. Okay, so with that bottom piece there selected, I'm going to go ahead and add a new material. Now I should let you know that throughout this tutorial we're going to be using the node editor a lot. So sometimes I'll be changing things over here in the materials, and then sometimes I will be using the node editor, which is right here. And essentially they are the same thing. So if you change something over here, then it adjusts it over there as well. But the node editor allows you a lot more freedom. And then the material editor over here is a lot easier to use and to see, but obviously it's very limited in sort of what you can do, etc. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and add in an image texture. So over here in the materials, if you go to color, then click that little dot next to it, and then you select image texture, then open. Now I've made these textures available to download beneath this video. Well, they're all available from CG Textures. But yeah, this image that we're going to be using is called Rust 86. So go ahead and load that one in right here. And if we have a look at it from the camera viewpoint right now, and then turn on rendered viewport shading. By the way, now might be a good time to go ahead and save your file. Okay, so that we can now see that we have got this. I should also let you know, by the way, that I have UV unwrapped everything in the scene. So you'll notice that this right here, it's already UV unwrapped and it's ready to go. It's really easy if you wanted to, know what UV unwrapping, how to UV unwrap something like this. You just go into front view mode like this, then go U, and then select cylinder projection like that. And as you can see here, you now get a very nice, clean cut, UV unwrapped image, like so. Anyway, I'll just load that one back in there. Cycles has this thing where whatever over here, if there's nothing placed there, then it'll remove the image that's right there. So make sure that you adjust that. I'll just bring that back in again because it's just completely disappeared. So Rust 86. All right, there we go. So if you were to just leave this texture just like this, it wouldn't look very realistic at all. It looks very one-dimensional, very flat, and the reason for that is that there isn't really any interaction with the scene. It's just looking like a very flat, very diffused, meaning there's not really any reflections or anything like that, and it just looks boring. So you need to add some other things to it in order to make it look more realistic. So this image that we've got right here, we aren't actually going to use that for the render. That is actually going to be used as a mask for other textures. Okay, so if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry. So what we're going to do is add in another image texture now. So if you go to Shift A and then select Texture, Image Texture, the image that I'm going to use right now is this one, Rust Mixed. Okay, so let's just load this in right here. And if I now add in a color mix node like this, drop this in there, then take the output of that color the previous image that we've got there, and then put that into the, let's go factor input like this. And then let's set this color to a nice hot pink like that so we can actually see any changes that it's making. Now currently there's no change at all. And that's because this right here, it needs to be adjusted, so changing the brightness and contrast of it before it can be used as a mask. By the way, putting that into the factor input right there, that makes it act as a mask. Oh, also I should probably put that in the appropriate spot right there. Okay, well now you can see it's making an effect, but it's solid purple. Anyway, so in order to make it have an effect, what we want to do is to add in a color ramp node. I'm going to drop this in right here, and then this is going to allow us to change the brightness and contrast of it. You could add a brightness and contrast node if you wanted to, but this will give us a little bit more control over what happens. So you can see now that if I move these, I'll push this down now. If I move these in close like that, then you can see that this rust over here, it changes. And what it's doing is it's taking the dark and the light values from the original image, and it's now using that as a mask, as in right here. So it's now using that rusted metal texture underneath it in parts where it is dark, I think, or light, whatever. And then it's using this hot pink, which is in this other input right there. It's using that hot pink color in all the other places. So the actual color from this itself isn't actually showing up. So if I was to just, experiment with this a little bit more, you can sort of play around with how much rust you actually want there to be there and how much of the actual sort of metal material you want underneath it. So I think if I just position that a little bit more, something like that should be fine. Okay, now if I was to take the output from that the first image texture that we used and then put it where we've got that pink color, you can see that we now have a very, or more realistic looking rust texture. But however, the rust itself is looking a little bit sort of one-dimensional, like it's just mostly one color, that one brown color. So what we can do is actually add a third image texture and then put that in the input there, which will give us some more different looking rust. So if I go to add image texture, and the texture that I use, I'm going to be using this one right here, Rust 141, which is this nice sort of orangey, grungy looking rust. And then I put that there into the top input. You can see that we now get some more different looking rust, which is a lot more, you know, cool looking, which is the technical term I think that people use. Anyway, so you can see that it's looking a lot nicer, but you can actually go one step further. We can make it now that we've got this image texture here, which is using as a mask, now we can make it so that the actual metal underneath it is reflective, so it's kind of shiny, and the rust is diffused, so that it's, you know, got, because rust itself, it's very rarely reflective unless it's rained or something like that. So we want the rust to be non-reflective, but we want that metal underneath it to have a nice kind of shiny look to it. So the way we're going to do that is by coming over here. And if we add in a second shader, okay, so we've got one shader at the moment, which is this diffuse. Now I've added in a glossy shader. And now if I add in a mix shader, and I just want to state right now, there is a difference between a mix color node and a mix shader, okay? So don't get them confused. They look very similar. I've been confused before and I wondered why things don't work, so I just thought I'd let you know. So I'm now going to combine the glossy into the bottom input right there. And currently all it's given us is a basic, you know, 50% diffuse, 50% glossy. So if I made that all the way 0, it's 100% diffuse, and that one is all 100% glossy. However, if I take the output from our color ramp right here and then put that into the factor input, it uses it as a mask. And as you can see, now the rust is staying as it should be, and the rest of it is completely sort of glossed, yeah, completely 100% glossy. Now we don't want it to be 100% glossy. So instead, what I'm going to do is to add in a mix node. I think this is what I did anyway. Let's just, nope, that's not right. Let me just think for a second. What did I do? Glossy. Okay, oh, right, I know what to do. Okay, so we actually take a mix node, drop this in right here, and put this into the bottom input right there, and then make this black, solid black like that. And then what that's doing is it's now coloring this color ramp, and it's giving it a slightly black looking thing. So it's essentially turning down the opacity of this mask so that this glossy value here doesn't come through quite as heavy. So if I turn that down, then that's going to make that less and less, less and less glossy coming through. So that's essentially just going to act as our, you know, controller of how much gloss we want to appear. So we can experiment with those values a little bit. If you want to make it more shiny looking, then you turn down this roughness. If you want it to be like a complete mirror, which I don't recommend, you can make that 0. But I think I might go with a 0.2 value for now. We might be able to change that later if we wanted to, and you can turn up that mix value if you want more reflection or less reflection. Anyway, you sort of get the idea. Once we add in, you know, we have the actual light from the lamp itself coming through, we'll be able to make some more better decisions over what the exact value should be. But for now, what we're going to do is now add a displacement. So the material is looking okay at the moment, but to make it even more realistic, we want there to be bump mapping. Okay, so wherever there this rust is, we want that to be bump mapped. So what we need to do is if we were to take the output from this color ramp and then put it straight into this displacement right here, what you'd find is you get 100% bump like that, which doesn't look very good at all. So instead, what we need to do is to add a mix node, and this is how it's done. Don't ask me why this is how it's done, but it's just the way it is. We take the output from this color ramp and then we put it into this mix node, and then we set this to multiply. We make the top value 100% white, so turn that all the way up, and then we take the output of that multiply, and then we put it into the displacement. And then this value that's right here, this becomes how much bump map is used. So if I turn that down, then I get less bump map, and then if I turn it up, I should get more. Oh, hang on, what's happening here? Let me just get 100% no matter what. All right, let me just tweak this a little bit. Output, that's set to multiply. If I turn that down, Okay, it's a little bit better now. All right, so if I just turn that to that. Okay, now we're getting a little bit better looking bump mapping. I think just from this color ramp here, I'm not sure why, but the color ramp is making it look really, really over the top. So the bump mapping, oh, by the way, we don't want the bump mapping to be sort of inverted where the rust is. So if we add in a color invert node, drop this in right here, then we now get the bump mapping coming in the right direction. So the rust is the one sticking out, not digging inwards, if that makes sense. So we could turn that down to be something, there we go, that's a little bit better. And then if you wanted there, you know, you saw what I had before, if you wanted it to be sort of like an overall sort of bumpy look, then you can get sort of bump on the actual, you know, parts where it's metal as well. But I actually kind of like it so that the bump mapping is just coming from the rust itself. So I've got this factor amount here set to, what did I have it as before? Oh, hang on. No, that's the invert value. This one, okay. I got the factor amount here set to 0.02, and that's the one I'm going to go with for now. I might just, actually no, I'll go with 1.05. All right, there we go. That's looking a little bit nicer. So that is essentially the rust texture done and dusted. So what I'm going to do is, I'll just call this material, let's just call this rust. And then under here where it's got the settings, the viewport color, I'm actually going to change that to be something that looks a little bit more like rust, so that over here in the 3D viewport, you can actually tell which objects have that material because it is now solid brown. So I'm now just going to select the objects that need that material. So I'm just going to select all of these one by one, and then select that one last, and then hit Control L, and then select material. This one as well. And that should be, oh, that one as well. Okay, that should be that. So let's just save that. There we go. Now we've got the materials all over the lantern, and as you can see, it's looking quite fantastic, or better than it was before when we had just that one image texture there. Now I should let you know also that these objects here, as I said before, they have been UV unwrapped to suit the scene, because this tutorial isn't about UV unwrapping, it is about you know, just the texturing and materials and stuff like that. So yeah, so you can see that this image is, you know, this particular part of the lantern is that size, and then this particular part is that size. So I've adjusted the scaling of these to suit it so that the rust appears about the same over the whole model. So this, you know, one little tiny piece at the top there, you can see that it takes up a lot less space in the UV image editor, which means that the rust is going to be relatively about the right size for that particular piece. So you get my drift. You have to adjust the UV unwrapping to suit it. You can't just take this material that you've got right here, save it in a library, and then apply it to any object and it's then going to look good. You have to make sure that you scale everything accordingly so that the rust fits it. Otherwise you'll have, you know, really tiny looking rust so you can hardly see anything and it all just looks chock-a-block, or you'll get really massive rust and it just looks horrible. So make sure you get the scaling right. Now for the wire, this one is really easy. We're just going to add a new material right here. Leave it as diffuse. I'm just going to add an image texture, and this texture that I'm going to use is one that we've already used just before. It's Rust 141. So just go ahead, load that in, and as you can see in the little viewport editor, you've now got a rusted looking wire. Now this has been UV unwrapped. If I just go there, you can see the cylinder has been UV unwrapped, so it's just repeating that same thing. You can actually see the texture is actually repeating on the wire there, but you won't be able to see it in the final render pretty much, so it's okay. And I'm just going to apply that now, so I'll just call this rusty wire. And I'll just apply it to all of these ones here that require that exact material. Let's hit Control L, materials, and I'll just give that a kind of orangey looking color there so we can tell it apart. And there we go. I didn't actually give any texture or material to this top part, this little, I don't know what you call that, little lever thing at the top there. Yeah, I never gave any material to that, and I didn't really see it in the render either, so it wasn't a problem. Anyway, okay, so having a look now, you can see that the lantern is 100% done. Well, aside from, of course, this bulb. So that is the next thing we're going to be doing, is to adding in, some texturing and materials for this bulb. So I'm going to move this plane. Let's just move that to the side. We might need it later on, maybe not. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in our flame. Oh, not that one, this one. Okay, so on layer 3, I've got the flame just as it is on its own. Now, currently you can't really see it because it's trapped inside what is currently just a solid object there with no redeeming qualities at all. It's just a big blob. So we're going to add a material, and the shader that I'm going to give it is glass. And now you can see that the light is now passing through the glass. However, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, or if you noticed it immediately, but the light is very, very noisy. Now, you might think, well, maybe that's just how the light looks. Well, if I move this bulb to a separate render layer, sorry, a separate layer, if I move that to layer 4 right now, and if we just take a look at it now without that bulb, you can see that the lighting is immediately a lot clearer. So here it is with that glass bulb, very, very noisy, and then here it is without it. Now, in the interior rendering tutorial I did, I said, you know, it's a problem when you have glass in the scene because the light passes through it and it makes everything noisy and it's horrible. And so I just got rid of the glass, and it wasn't really noticeable in the final render, so I said, just get rid of the glass. You don't need it because it just causes way too much rendering problems. If you wanted to keep this like this, you would have to render the scene for a really, really long time in order to get rid of that noise. Now, the noise, by the way, if you're wondering, is because the light is passing through this glass, and then the Cycles rendering engine is trying to cast caustics and all sorts of glass effects over the rest of the scene. Now, obviously, that takes a very long time to compute. However, we don't need it because, you know, even if it does do all those effects to the glass and the lighting and stuff like that, it's very, very minimal. There's almost no change to the lighting whatsoever. So essentially, all you've got is a really noisy, over-the-top render that's taking way too long, and it's just a pain. Now, in the comment section of the interior rendering tutorial I did a while back, somebody mentioned a trick that I found was really, really useful, and I'm going to show it to you right now. So in order to get it so that we have the glass visible, but it's rendering as if the glass wasn't there, so the lighting is smooth looking, here is what you do. We're going to add in a transparent shader, like so, then add in a mix shader, and we're going to combine these two like this. Now, you can see immediately that the lighting is a lot clearer. However, all it's doing is it's making a 50% on this factor value right there, a 50% blend between the glass and a 50% blend between the transparency. So if I set that all the way to 1, you get 100% glass, all the way to 0, 100% glass, all the way to 1, 100% transparent. So now the glass isn't even visible. So what we can do is if we go to input and then select light path, we can do something a little bit tricky. We can use, now these light paths, what this means is it's essentially sort of tricking the scene. So, you know, normally in the scene, it's going to render everything as is, everything is going to interact with each other, and that's just how it should look. However, in certain circumstances, such as this one, you want to be able to change things so that some things don't interact with others. So this light path thing essentially allows us to do that. I'm not an expert on this light path. I've only used it a handful of times, but that is my basic grasp of how it works. So what we can do is we can add a mix node, change this blend type to be add, and if we take the output of the is camera ray, put it into the top input, and then the output of the is transmission ray, and we place it into the other, and then we set the factor amount for that to 1, it's now blending. This is camera ray, by the way, is making it so that what is visible to the camera, which would be the glass, and then the is transmission ray is making what is visible to be light being transmitted through an object. That's my grasp of it. It's then adding them together, so we've now got both of those. Then if we take the output of that and then put it into the factor input of that mix shader, oh, I might have to flip those around, then there you go. We've now got the glass showing up as it should be, and the light is now passing through it as if it wasn't even there. So that is a quick little trick there for you. That's 100% somebody else's idea. That was in the comments section on the last tutorial I did for the interior rendering. So yeah, 100% props goes to that guy who made that little trick there for you. There was a few people that came up with the idea, and yeah, that's the little gist there for you. Okay, so let me just move this around a little bit. So now what we want to do is we want to create some sort of a grungy looking effect on this glass material here, so that it looks as though the glass isn't shiny and brand new, but it's, you know, been in the outback or whatever for a long time, and it's, you know, all dirty and whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply some textures to this roughness input right there, and then what that's going to do is it's going to, if I just turn that up there, you can see it kind of makes it look like frosted glass. So if we can then apply a texture to that frosted glass, it's going to make it look as though gunk and dirt and grease and stuff is stuck to the glass. So that's what we're going to do. So first texture that we're going to add is texture, image texture. Let me just load this up. Is this one right here, plaster white worn. This is just a basic grunge texture. This came from CG Textures, of course, as do all of the textures in this tutorial. First thing I'm going to do is to add in a color ramp. Drop this in right here, and then put that into the roughness input right there. And now if I turn this black value to be about there, the white value to be about there, and I zoom in, you can see that you get some parts where it's 100% frosted glass, and then some parts where the texture is cutting away at it. Let's just see. And you can sort of experiment with this as to how much of each you want. But anyway, let's just go with that. So we're now going to add another image texture. Move this down. And this texture that I'm going to use is Grunge Maps 107, which is kind of like a dripping water type texture, kind of like, grease or whatever slid down glass. I found it kind of worked quite nicely. And I'm going to duplicate that color ramp. Put this in there. And I'm going to add in a mix node. Whoops, that's a brightness value node. Mix node. It's kind of slow as I'm doing things because this thing is trying to render it every time I touch it. So if I just put it on pause, then I can move around a lot nicer, a lot more smoothly. So I'm just going to take that just like so. So just combining these two textures here, setting this to multiply, and then set that to 100, or sorry, 1. Now if I turn off the pause right there, you can see what we're doing now. So we've got this original texture, and now we've got this one which is now cutting away at it. So the more I let this blackness value through, then the more of these kind of like this little droplet looking effect that we've got is going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this sort of, this top one, this color ramp. I'm just going to make that nice and smooth from left to right like that. And then I'm going to move this black value all the way to the left, and then I'm going to move this one up. And now I'm going to turn down this blackness value to be something a little bit more grayish looking, just like that. And that didn't really work. Let's experiment with that just a little bit more. I'm sort of having a look. I got like a monitor over here because I can't remember all the values. So I've got my my saved scene on the right hand side. So I keep having to pause and just check that I'm getting the materials right. So anyway, I'll just turn that one down to black, and then this top one up here, I'm going to move that one sort of towards the center, and then drag this white value over a little bit more, so that you've got the grungy texture, this top one, which is like that plastered wall, sort of cutting away, so parts of it that are not entirely shown. And then you've got this droplet, this one right here, which is sort of messing with it. So you've got sort of the droplets which are cutting away at the grunginess. So it kind of looks like, yeah, just a mix of those two different types of textures, basically. So I mean, it looks all right, I guess, so far. Now, this IOR value right here, this is really going to impact how it looks. So if you set that all the way up to 2, then you get really, really super frosted, horrible looking glass. If you set it to 1.1, however, or let's try 1.2, I think that should be right. Yeah, you can see it kind of looks a little bit nicer. Maybe 1.1. Yeah, there you go. And so that's that, basically. You can see that it's now, the glass is a lot more suited for the scene. It doesn't look brand new. It looks like it's got grunge and all sorts of gunk, which is picking up the light as it touches it, and that's basically the right sort of effect that we want. Now, if you want to actually color, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I should get a drink of water. If you want to actually color the glass itself, what you can do is take the output of this plaster right here. If I just actually take the output of that color ramp and then put it into the color input right there, you can see that we've now colored that glass so that it's got some grunge on the outside. However, it's a little bit overkill. So I'm just going to duplicate that color ramp and just create a separate color ramp just for the coloring of the glass. I might just move that, yeah, a little bit further over, and I'll make it a brownish color like that. So it looks like you got a little bit of gunk and grungy stuff, which is kind of blocking the light as it comes through. Might be one of those cases where you could have the light sort of interacting with the grunge as it sort of paints the rest of the scene, but I really don't want to have to go through the render times in order to get that minute minute detail. All right, so the glass is pretty much done. That's looking good. It's looking fine and dandy. So the lantern is complete. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and get into the rest of the scene. So I'm just going to turn this to pause. And I'm just going to start bringing in the rest of the scene. So now we've got the rest of the scene. So the next one we're going to do is this wooden floor right here. So what we're going to do is apply a wood texture to it, and then we're going to be adding some footprints across it. So first thing to do is the wooden texture. So adding a new material to it, let's call it wood planks, like so, and add an image texture. And the texture that I'm going to use is called Wood Planks Dirty 3.1. So load that in right here, drop that in as such, and now I'm just going to unpause this this thing right here so we can actually see how it looks when it's rendered. And there we go. And you might be wondering, wow, why does that look so good all of a sudden? Well, you know, without having to do much work at all, it's just automatically looked great. The reason for that is that this has been UV unwrapped according to that particular texture. So if you have a look in this UV image editor right here, just set that to pause, you can see that these floorboards, which I've modeled myself, are matched with the actual texture itself. So you can just use the texture by itself and just have a plane there like that, and then use some bump mapping and stuff like that. And I tried that, even though I like painted in, like made the, you know, like my own hand painted texture and just did like black lines wherever there was lines and stuff like that. You know, that helps if you want to get crevices, but the only way to get these really deep crevices that we've got right here is to model them yourself. So that's what I decided to do. So I just really simply, if you just zoom in here, you can see I just started with like one plane, and then I just sort of extruded it down, created a few beveled corners to make it look a little bit smoother. And then I just went into the UV image editor and then just matched them up with planks. I mean, it was like a few minute jobs, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or something, just to create these little floorboards there. But as you can see from the finished result, it does look really nice, and it looks, you know, 100 times better than just using a simple plane by itself. So if you have got a scene like this where you've got the camera quite close to the floorboards, I highly recommend, you know, hand modeling the floorboards, because it will look a lot nicer. But if you've got the camera far away from the camera, it won't really matter, so you can get away with just using a plane and then a texture on that, and it'll look fine. Anyway, so the next part of this that we're going to be doing is we want to add some footprints, okay? So we want to make it look like the farmer's come home or whatever, and he's trotted across the veranda, and he's got some muddy footprints. And that's really going to help break up the scene as well, because currently the floorboards all look relatively clean. You'll notice that I've also I've added in a particle system. So if you go to the particle settings right here, you can see that I've just got these tiny little flakes on it. I mean, that's like it's a really easy effect. I'll just show you where that is. Where is it? No, that's some leaves. No. 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 Where is it? One of these little objects. I mean, I can't even find it now. Sorry about that. Well, I can't show you. If you can see here, I just got like a plane, and I extruded it out, and I created these tiny little chips, and they're just now sitting on the surface there, which looks kind of nice. Anyway, so I've just placed them across the surface, but we want to create footprints now. Okay, let's do the footprints. So what we need to do is we want to export this UV layout, so that we're going to take it into GIMP, and we're going to be adding in some footprints, but we want to be able to see where the floorboards actually are. So to do that, we're going to go to Image, New, and then I'm going to set this to be 2048 by 2048. That's the number of pixels. So if you want higher resolution, then I recommend you set that to a higher resolution amount. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Then I go, what am I doing? UV, export UV layout. All right, so I'm just going to find a folder over here, and I'm going to call this tutorial UV. And I'm saving it as a PNG format like that. And I'm going to click export UV layout. Now that'll disappear and nothing will have changed. But now what you do is you open up your image editor. Now I'm going to be using GIMP. I'm not normally a GIMP guy, but I was having a little Facebook conversation with Pablo Vazquez. Sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong, Pablo. But he was telling me all about GIMP and GIMP 2.8, which is out right now, and how it's a big improvement over the last one. So I thought I'd give it a go and start using it in some more tutorials. Anyway, so I'm just going to go open up this image, tutorial UV, open it up, make it full screen so it looks a little bit more like Photoshop. And first thing I'm going to do is add a new layer, and I'm going to make that layer white, and I'm going to place it underneath our... Oh, hang on, why is that working? Why can't I move that layer? It won't let me. Layer attributes. Move the layer order. Are you locked? Why are you locked? Do not lock. Okay, there we go. I just got to click that little arrow there. I don't know why I can't move that. Usually I could, but anyway, doesn't matter. Alright, I'm going to add another layer now, a new layer, and I'm going to make this layer transparent, like so. And now that's positioned above it. That's good. It's in the right spot. Okay, so we want to create some footprints. Now, if you wanted to hand paint them yourself, you could go ahead and do that, but we're lazy people, and really, it's going to look a lot more realistic if you do this method anyway. So I found, I just went to Google and I typed in footprint Photoshop brushes, and I found this one that you can see right here. Now, although this is designed for Photoshop, it also works with GIMP. I think that's just one of the things they made it compatible for, or GIMP, tried to make Photoshop brushes compatible for GIMP. But anyway, so go ahead, download these brushes, and then go back into GIMP. And if you go to Edit, then select Preferences, then Folders, and then click on Brushes, you'll see you've got a folder destination right there. So go ahead and copy that destination, then go to your Windows Explorer or whatever operating system you're using, type it in, and then it'll take you to a blank folder like this. Then all you do is take that downloaded .abr file, and then you just put it in here, as I've done, footprints.ps brush, whatever. Put that in right there, then go back into GIMP, and then in your little brushes, so if you go to Windows, whoops, what did I click on? Toolbox? I don't know if I want a toolbox. Yeah, it's already there. Okay. And then you click on brushes, then you'll get this little thing right here, and then just click on that little refresh right down there in the bottom right hand corner, and then you should then be able to see the footprint brush that we have right here. So I want to change the color of that to be black, so make sure you've also got the color, this colors window right there, this one right there, so you can change the color of things. And I'm just going to start modeling, painting this footprint brush like this, making sure that it's on a separate layer right there, like this. And I just want it to be down the middle of these floorboards like that. You can change the spacing of the brush. So if you set it to around about like 120, you can then just click and then drag, and you'll get the footprints evenly spaced apart. You can sort of maybe turn that up a little bit more, so you've got some sort of footprint spaced looking things like that. Anyway, so if you went to then, create the footprints on the other side like that, you could see that, I mean, it looks okay, but the footprints, you've got just one left foot, and it really should be flipped, so it's inverted. So the way around that, I mean, I'm sure there's a way you can actually flip the brush so that it does that itself, but I'm just going to flip the entire thing horizontally like that, and then I'm just going to click and drag like that. And I'm just going to create a few footprints at the end of, where the veranda is, because, you walk up the steps and then you stamp your feet. So I've just sort of created a few extra footprints there. And then if you want also, you can change the color, the brush color, whatever, to be white. And then, switch to the eraser, and then go and then check one of these sort of speckledy, splotchy looking things like this. And then you can just sort of like chip away at parts of the, hang on, just turn down the size of this. Yeah, so that it doesn't all look exactly the same as one another. So I'm just using this eraser just to sort of chip away at it. Now you can go to in as much detail as you want for this, but in this certain instance, I think that is fine. So I'm now just going to hide that UV layout that we've got right there, those floorboards. We don't need that anymore. So we just want a white solid image with these footprints exactly as they are. And I'm going to go to File, Export, and I'm going to start saving this. You have to go to Export, don't go to Save As. They've sort of changed it, I realize that. And I'm just going to save this, call it whatever you want. Let's call it footprints. Okay, export, and then click on export like so. So now going back into Blender, you'll notice that because we added a new image and it was called Untitled, it automatically switched out the image texture here for the materials, which I think is like to try and make it easier for you, but it's normally just a problem. But anyway, so make sure that you load back in the wooden planks that we had before, just like that. And now we're going to add in a different image texture, like this image. And where is it? The one we just created, tutorial UV footprints. I'm just going to open that up. By the way, we don't have to set up UV. Like in past tutorials, I've gone, you know, texture coordinate, and then I've connected it up UV like that. By default, it's automatically using the UV coordinate, so you don't need to do that. So just to clarify something, maybe if people are having trouble. Anyway, we want to place this image texture right here. We want to place it before the diffuse because it's using the diffuse shader, but we're changing the color of it. So I'm now adding in a color mix node like this. I'm taking the output from the footprints, putting it into the bottom input, and then I'm setting that to multiply. So now, if I go to, let's set this to rendered. Let's just take a look at it. Where is the light? Whoops, whoa, here we go. There we go, now I've got the light on everything. And you can see you've got the footprints there. They're very, very light, like very hard to see at the moment. So if you turn up that multiply amount to 1, then you're just going to get those solid, thick, black footprints, like somebody's just treaded through tar or something like that. But I don't know, like 0.7, 0.6 might work. And if you wanted to color those footprints so that they aren't black, you can add in a color ramp node. Using a lot of color ramps in this tutorial, but they're really helpful. And I've grown to like them recently, so that's why I'm using them a lot. You can change that color to be brown like that if you wanted to mess around with the color. Anyway, that's basically that. For my the one that I used for my my image, sorry, my final render, I should say. This is the footprints. So you can see that I've kind of made some half opaque footprints. So some of them have been worn out and then some of them are fresh. So, and then I've smudged some of them as well so they look a little bit better. So yeah, go to a bit of detail like that. I've skimped over it because this is a tutorial, I don't want to bore you. But yeah, go to a little bit more detail and you'll get some more better looking footprints. But they're pretty good as they are, so that's not bad. So that's how you add in footprints. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is to add a material to this, these sort of wooden poles there. I mean, this is pretty basic. It's essentially just doing what we did for the floorboards. Just add in a new material here. Let's give this an image texture. And the texture that we're going to use is one from CG Textures, of course. Wood planks painted. And I'm just going to connect that up just like that. And if we now just take a look at it from the rendered view, like this. Let's just take a look. Any second now, it should already be ready to go because it's already been UV unwrapped to the appropriate place. So yeah, as you can see, that looks pretty fine. Yeah, it's already been UV unwrapped, so it suits that particular texture. But yeah, so if we wanted to add a new material just for those metal plates that are holding, holding that in, then what you could do is select the metal plate, hit Control L. Select all these ones here as well, just one of those vertices, hit Control L, oop, that one as well, give it a new material, let's just call this metal plates, give it diffuse, you don't really want any glossiness to it, and then I'll just hit assign like so. And now those metal plates have got a different material to the wooden beams. So everything else is ready to go except for these background. We've got some trees in the background. So for this, I'm just going to be using a texture which is from the Nature Academy, which is there's a collection of for Platinum members. We've got a collection of trees which you can just sort of throw into the background of any scene, which kind of makes it, kind of add something on the horizon. So I'm giving you this one just as a freebie so you can just try it out and use it for this tutorial or whatever. But essentially it's just an image which has got, it's a PNG and the background is transparent. So in order to get this to work using cycles, what we're going to do is add a new material. Let's zoom in right there. And then I'm going to change the texture type. Hang on, no, add a new shader. And this new shader is going to be transparent, like that. Sorry if I'm going really quickly. I want to try and keep this tutorial fairly quick because I know people don't like long tutorials. So I'm now going to add in a mix shader, and I'm going to combine the diffuse and the transparent shader together. And I suppose I should also add in the image texture, that would help. So dropping that into the diffuse shaders input like that. And then this texture that I'm going to be using is this one right here, image 8880, just like so. And then if I take the alpha from that image and then I put it into the input of that factor, that's then going to use it as a mask. And then if I just, it's paused, that's right, let's unpause that. You can see that now the parts of it are transparent, however it's the wrong way. So if we just flip those, then you can see we've now got the trees in the right place as they should be. So I'm just going to apply that same material to this, the one right next to it as well. So we've now got two lots of trees, and there we go. So that pretty much does it. So I'm just going to put the lantern back in the scene as it should be, and it's looking pretty good. So what we're going to do now is just do a tiny incy-wincy little bit of compositing just to wrap up this tutorial. So let's just go into, whoa, got so much going on. So I'm using the GPU rendering in cycles, so it kind of makes things slow as I'm moving things around, but it also renders a lot quicker. So anyway, okay, so for the compositing, what we want to do is we want to make this this little lamp, this little flame here, we want to give that a glow effect. We also want to add a background to the scene. So in order to get the background in the scene, first thing we need to do is in these render values right here, I'm going to go underneath where it says film, and I'm going to check transparent, and then where it's got PNG, I'm going to click RGBA, and that's going to render an image so that the environment, that background, is completely transparent. So you could then save that PNG image, take it into Photoshop or GIMP, and then superimpose your own background if you wanted to, or we can just do it in the compositor, which is what we're going to do. Somebody emailed me that little trick recently as well, the transparent one. I wasn't really always sure what film and transparent was, but there you go. So we've checked transparent, we've selected RGBA, and then for this flame, we want to separate that to a separate render layer. So underneath in these render options here where it's got layers, I'm going to click a new render layer. I'm going to call this new render layer flame, and then because it's isolated on a separate layer like that, layer 3, I think I've got actually this the bulb. I should move that back to layer 1. So there we go. Just like so. So on this flame render layer, I'm just going to select layer 3 so that it's now just rendering that for that layer. And I'm going to uncheck use environment so that just in case you don't actually get the world showing up into the environment as well. Render layer, that's ready to go, that's all checked, and now we can go ahead and render it. So you might want to experiment with the samples, maybe go for 100 samples or something, depending on what your computer can handle. Anyway, once you've got that all set up, let's go ahead and hit render. Make sure all your layers are on as they should be. I'm going to turn this shoe layer on here, even though I didn't really show you how to texture or whatever the shoes, but I'll just throw that in there just so you can see it in the final scene. Let's give that a render now, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so now we've got the render. We're just going to jump over to the compositor right now. And the first thing we're going to do is to add in a background. So I'm going to add image like this. And the image that I'm going to use is one from CG Textures. It's just a really nice, clear sort of afternoon sunset type image. So I'm going to drop that in right there. I'm now going to add in a scale node. So distort, scale. Going to connect this just like that. Then set the type of scaling to be render size. Now if I add in a, let's see, color, alpha over node, drop this in right here, then take the output of that and then put it into, I think it's the bottom input like that. I think that would be wrong actually, I think it should be the top one. Yep, there we go. So now it's in the right spot. If you wanted to, you could add a translate node and then move up the horizon so that it's in the proper space. But I like that there's a little moon and a star there in the background, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And I'm also going to add in a RGB node, just like so. And I'm going to turn down the brightness of that background so that it looks a little bit more like nighttime, and it doesn't detract from the attention of the foreground here. So that can kind of help there. And I think that's looking pretty good. The final thing that we're going to do is to add in that glare effect from the actual lantern itself. So we're going to add in a new render layer, and we're just going to select flame, Let's just take a look at that. There you go. We've got a nice isolated flame by itself. It's very, very bright. So if we now add in our blur node, like so, set this to fast Gaussian, check relative, then click on X, and then let's go 10%. You'll see you've got a really, really massive glowing blur effect. So what I'm going to do is something that I very rarely ever do, but I'm going to add in a mix node, and I'm going to set the bottom input to be black. Actually, no, I'll put it into the bottom input, and then I'll make the top input black. And then if I just turn down this, that's going to act as like sort of like cutting away at how much of that glow is going to shine through. So now we've got it down to something that's less blown out. If you set it to 0.03, so that it's really, really toned down how much of that glow is going to go through. Now if I add in a glare node, like so, drop this in here, and if I turn these streaks all the way up to maximum being 16, then turn the iterations up to 5 so that you get a smoother looking streak effect, then turn the mix value all the way up to 1 as well, so that it's just the glare node, not the actual flame showing through it, even though you can't really see it anyway. And I'll turn the color modulation up to be 0.6 so that you get some more like slight variation of colors in the streak effects. And you can also turn up the threshold as well if you wanted to change sort of which parts of the flame actually are glowing. And then I'm also going to change the angle offset to be 10 so that it's not like dead on like a vertical streak that's showing up there, but it's slightly to the side, because I found looking at some reference photos that looks a little bit more realistic like that. And I'm just going to duplicate that mix node and just make it apply for this one for our glare node here as well. So that we turn that one right down. There you go. Now it's looking a little bit better. I'm now going to add another mix node, combine this together, set that to add, and now you can see you've got a mix between the glow and that streak effect. And now if we add that those two together again with our original scene, like so, let's just connect that up just like that. You can see that you now get a nice blend between those. And if I turn that down, that factor amount to be say 0.5 or something like that, then it looks a little bit better. So yeah, so that is pretty much it. If you wanted to, you could also add in like a vignette. I won't show you how to do that. You guys already know that. You can just check out the final render, final blend file if you want to find that out. But I'm just going to add in a lens distortion node, which I found just for this scene, I think it works quite nicely. I'm kind of against the lens distortion node because it can kind of blur things, but what it does is it's kind of like barrel distortion, so it fakes like the look of the lens when it kind of gives like the curvature. Because if, I don't know if you've realized, but pretty much every camera, when you take a photo of something, it distorts the image. So it's kind of like curved. You know, if you take a photo of a building, you'll notice that the lines and the you know, the edge of a building, it's slightly curved. So adding in this lens distortion node can help. And you'll notice that on these posts here, by adding in this lens distortion node, it's now giving them a nice curved shape, which is more realistic to how it looks in real life. And if you wanted to turn up the dispersion, you could as well, which gives it some slight chromatic aberration, which may or may not be what you want. Check fit, and then that's essentially it. So that concludes this tutorial, guys. So we learned how to add some nice rust texture to the lantern, add a nice sort of grungy effect to the glass. We've got some floorboards there. We've got some footprints on the floorboards. We've got some of this wooden chipped paint sort of thing, basic texture. We've added some trees in the background using an alpha masked image. A fake background in the compositor as well, and that pretty much sums up the tutorial. There was one other thing that I didn't show you how to do in this tutorial because I didn't really think it was that cool, but these shoes by themselves, they just use, I mean, it's really basic. I'll just show you. I'll just show you how they look right here. If anybody wants to try it for themselves, they can sort of dabble with it. Okay, there we go. So for this this shoes that we've got right here, just turn that up so we can actually see them a little bit better. I mean, it's just a diffuse texture that we've got, and then I've just used the exact perfect texture for it, which is this one right here, which is of like a suitcase or something that I found on CG Textures, and it just happens to shoot the shoes quite easily as well. So you can go ahead, you can add that one if you want. So yeah, so that concludes the tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Hope you learned a few things from it, and by all means, I'm always interested in seeing what you guys create. So if you create something cool, please post it in the comments below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.